Coming up on Arirang News. It's the beginning of a new school year in South Korea. For the first time in 4 years, schools across the nation held their ceremonies welcoming students into their new academic year without having to wear masks. In an apparent warning to Pyongyang amid its escalating threats, Seoul discloses the joint South Korea-U.S. teak knife exercise. A Ghostrider gunship deployed for the first time in a special drill designed to precisely strike critical targets in North Korea. From delivering parcels and monitoring security, South Korea could head to greater automation with robots. This as the nation's prime minister announces to overhaul regulations in robotics. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea. Thank you for joining us. We begin with South Korea's new school year kicking off today. During the height of COVID-19, schools had to begin the new year in compliance with social distancing rules. But for the first time in 4 years, schools across the nation held their welcome ceremonies with students and teachers not having to wear masks. Our Jo Sung-min leads us off.
First graders are entering the school gate holding the hands of their parents. Wearing backpacks almost as big as they are, some kids have brought flowers and are taking photos with their families and friends. A proper in-person entrance ceremony back for the first time since the pandemic.
I brought a lot of things like my backpack and shoes. I'm going to make many good friends.
Meet these parents who've come to the ceremony with their younger child. 2 years ago, their eldest had to go into the school all alone due to COVID-19. So this year brought smiles to their faces as well.
Back then, you could only take photos in front of the entrance gate, but now you can take pictures anywhere. I think today will be a good memory for a lot of children.
This elementary school in Seoul has 133 new students. Although they're not required to wear masks, almost everyone still does. Schools no longer have to put up barriers between seats at the cafeteria or take everyone's temperature, but this one is planning to keep these measures until May. On the other hand, they're not requiring students and teachers to use the so-called self-diagnostic apps for registering any potential COVID symptoms. The apps are only recommended now for those who actually have symptoms or are waiting for a COVID test result. The South Korean government has been letting schools have their own guidelines for COVID since January, but one place masks are always required is on the school bus. Classrooms also have to be ventilated frequently, and schools have to temporarily monitor students who report COVID symptoms. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
Passengers arriving in China from South Korea will no longer have to get a COVID-19 test when they get there starting Friday. They'll still have to get one, however, before boarding their flight. The Chinese embassy in Seoul made the announcement on Thursday after South Korea lifted its own test on arrival rule for China the day before. Like China, however, South Korea will continue to require pre-flight tests until March 10th. South Korea in January had reinstated its testing rule for China before and after arrival and temporarily stopped issuing short-term visas for Chinese nationals when China's cases soared as it ended its zero COVID policy. With the rules eased, South Korean airlines are planning to resume and expand routes to China. South Korean President Yoon shared his will for a future-oriented Seoul-Tokyo relationship during his speech yesterday commemorating the March 1st independence movement. In light of this, our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung reports on how key pending issues between the two countries are unfolding.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol defined Japan as a cooperative partner at the anniversary ceremony of the March 1st independence movement on Wednesday. The remark was welcomed by Japan. At a press conference in Tokyo on Wednesday, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirogatsu Matsuno echoed Yoon's sentiments, saying South Korea is an important neighbor that Japan should cooperate with on global issues. Despite Seoul and Tokyo's shared views on relations, however, a critical issue still remains unsolved: the compensation of Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. Seoul and Tokyo have recently been holding a series of high-level talks over this thorny issue, which is seen as one of the main reasons why relations soured between the two nations. Although no major breakthrough has been made so far, Seoul's foreign ministry says it will ramp up efforts.
In order to resolve the issue of forced labor, which is a major pending issue, the Korean government is listening to what the victims have to say and accelerating talks within various diplomatic levels of the foreign ministry in order to seek a reasonable solution.
Japan's financial newspaper, the Nikkei, reported that the Japanese prime minister should exercise his leadership and speed up discussions to resolve the issue. This comes as the paper said Yoon's speech has shown the willingness to mend ties, and therefore Japan should also consider what it can do. Rebutting criticism about the speech, an official from South Korea's presidential office stressed the key focus of Wednesday's remarks was to highlight the importance of bilateral cooperation in overcoming security and economic crises. The official also clarified that the message of the speech was clear in emphasizing that the government is focusing on taking a future-oriented path. Meanwhile, pundits are expecting there to be a Seoul-Tokyo summit sometime in March, but the foreign ministry stated that nothing has been decided as of now. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Starting last month, South Korea and U.S. forces have been conducting their annual special operation drills in response to growing threats from North Korea. And Seoul's military today released a footage of a heavily armed U.S. aircraft firing missiles and accurately hitting its target. Peunji has more.
A heavily armed warplane drops missiles and precisely hits its target. The American Air Force's AC-130J Ghostrider gunship, capable of extremely accurate navigation, has been sent to South Korea for the first time. The incredibly powerful aircraft can be armed with 30mm and 105mm cannons. It can also fire precision-guided weapons such as the AGM-176A Griffin missiles, AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, and GBU-39 small-diameter bombs. Releasing the video footage on Thursday, Seoul Joint Chiefs of Staff said Special Operations Forces from South Korea and the U.S. have been holding the annual exercise Teak Knife since early last month to increase interoperability between the two countries. It added that this week the forces are conducting training aimed at precisely striking enemy targets using aerial firepower. During the drill, South Korea's top military officer, General Kim Seung-gyum, inspected the combined special operations exercise and checked their readiness. He said the troops should be able to flawlessly strike the enemy's key facilities. He added they should be ready to complete their missions no matter when or what kind of operation it is, to counter evolving North Korean threats. Later this month, the Allies are also scheduled to conduct their combined springtime field training exercises called Freedom Shield. Peunji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in its latest punitive measures against Pyongyang's provocations, the Biden administration has slapped additional sanctions on individuals and institutions involved in advancing North Korea's nuclear and missile ambitions. Kim Hyun-sung has details.
The U.S. has taken more action against those supporting North Korea's illicit behavior. The Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, on Wednesday local time sanctioned 3 companies and 2 individuals for illicitly generating income for the North Korean government. Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence Brian Nelson emphasized the U.S. commitment to targeting the regime's illicit networks that help fund its destabilizing activities such as its weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs. The sanctioned companies include Chilsung Trading Corporation and Korea Petco Trading Corporation. The department said that these companies have generated funds for the North Korean government. OFAC also sanctioned 2 people, Hwang Gil-soo and Park Hwa-song. The 2 are accused of establishing Congo Akon Sarl in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to earn revenue from construction and statue building projects. Their commercial activities are suspected to have generated income for the DPRK regime. The sanctioned entities will have their transactions and properties blocked, and individuals will be denied entry into the U.S. In a separate statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Wednesday's action further aligns U.S. sanctions with our international partners and that the United States is committed to countering North Korea's efforts to generate revenue for its weapons programs. This follows North Korea's strategic cruise missile test last week and ICBM test launch last month. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's industrial output in January increased for the first time in 4 months, but consumer demand remained weaker with falling retail sales. Our Lee Soo-jin tells us what that means.
South Korea's overall industrial production in January rose compared to the month before for the first time in 4 months. Data from Statistics Korea on Thursday shows that the index for the country's industrial output stood at 109.7, up 0.5% from the previous month. The agency attributed the rise in overall industrial production to the increase in production in the mineral and manufacturing sectors as well as the service sector. Despite a fall in semiconductor production, output in the mining and manufacturing sectors combined rose by nearly 3% compared to a month earlier, with a strong performance in camera modules and eco-friendly cars. However, mining and manufacturing production was still down compared to the previous year.
As you are probably aware, the on-year decrease in the mining and manufacturing sector was quite large, especially because of the decrease in chip production amid the decline in the semiconductor market. The fall can also be attributed to the number of working days, which was one fewer in January due to the Lunar New Year holiday.
The service sector grew 0.1% compared to the month before, led by a rise in the retail and wholesale sector and software development and computer programming industries. However, retail sales, a barometer for consumer demand, edged down 2.1% on month. The agency said this was mostly because of the drop in clothing sales amid the warmer than normal winter. Facility investment also fell 1.4% as investment in machinery declined. Another sign of economic decline was the composite index of coincident indicator, an estimate reflecting employment, household income, and industrial output. It dropped in January by 0.4 points from the month before to 99.4, its fourth monthly decline in a row. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Robots delivering packages to apartment buildings and patrolling the streets could become common sights in South Korea. This as the nation announces to overhaul regulations in robotics and other new industries. Kim Jong-sil reports.
A landscape for the future. At the third Regulatory Innovation Strategy meeting on Thursday, South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and officials from ministries including trade, science, and health came up with ambitious plans for various industries, one especially for the use of robots. The officials called them game changers and agreed that robots should be walking the streets and delivering parcels in South Korea as early as this year, sooner than the previous goal of 2025. Other industries that will benefit from this regulatory innovation plans are biohealth and the metaverse. The health officials plan to systemize online medical treatment starting this year, hoping to improve access to medical care and manage chronically ill patients anytime they need, while South Korea's Ministry of Science hopes to foster metaverse businesses in the future. But first, they plan to come up with guidelines to differentiate gaming content from the metaverse. Prime Minister Han called regulatory innovations a must in order to boost the private sector, especially during these tough economic times. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
The world-renowned trade show for the mobile industry, which began on Monday in Spain, draws to a close today after 4 days. The 2,000-plus exhibitors at the 2023 Mobile World Congress drew huge crowds to showcase the latest innovations in mobile communications and artificial intelligence. Shin Ha-young with more.
The world's biggest telecom fair in Barcelona was all about AI, fueled by the ChatGPT craze, and 5G with a hint of 6G too. The 4-day MWC-23 opened under the theme of Velocity, Unleashing Tomorrow's Technology Today. Participants weren't limited to mobile technology, with 5G acceleration, fintech, OpenNet, Reality Plus, and digital everything all key themes of the exhibition. And at the event, one of South Korea's biggest wireless telecommunications operators, SK Telecom, introduced the company's developments in AI, urban air mobility, 6G, and the metaverse. Under the theme of AI, the wave of innovation, visitors to SK's booth were able to experience flying cars and AI-based robots in person.
Our new strategy, AI to Everywhere, aims to create AI that connects with the world, without being monopolized or biased towards a single company.
Another South Korean mobile carrier, KT, presented a solution to increase the efficiency of AI logistics center operations. South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics had its Galaxy S23 series and Galaxy Book 3 Ultra on display. It also showcased its 5G network technology. Small and medium-sized firms also participated in the event, helped by South Korea's Trade Investment Promotion Agency, gov't. Most of those businesses specialize in digitalization and virtual reality.
One of the startups that grabbed attention is XL8, which has developed AI translation technology in collaboration with Netflix.
China was absent from CES 2023 in January, but at MWC 23, 150 Chinese firms joined, with tech giant Huawei having the biggest presence. Huawei showcased its new flagship Mate 50 series. Meanwhile, the U.S. had one of the most popular booths, with Microsoft introducing an update to its Bing search engine combined with ChatGPT. Apart from new hardware and technology, network usage fees were under the spotlight amid calls for content providers to share the burden of costs. Netflix co-CEO Greg Peters argued that the company doesn't want to be forced to pay network costs, warning that content will suffer if it's forced to do so. His remarks came after Thierry Breton, the EU Commissioner, stressed the need for a financing model for network investment. 신하영, Arirang News.
South Korea last year continued to be one of the top countries in terms of seeking patents overseas. For the third year in a row, it ranked number 4 in terms of applications filed under the International Patent Cooperation Treaty. These applications can eventually lead to patents being granted in other countries. According to the Korean Intellectual Property Office, the number of applications filed by South Korea rose last year to more than 22,000. This is an on-year increase of 6.2%, which is the biggest increase among the countries in the top 10. By companies, Samsung Electronics ranked number 2 in the world and LG ranked 9. Globally, the number of PCT applications declined by more than 6%, but the increase for South Korea could be a sign of future growth in exports. As part of nation's ambitious space vision, South Korea's Science Ministry today shared its proposal for a special law to create space agency this year, what's dubbed the Korean version of NASA. Lee Si-hoo has more.
South Korea is gearing up to launch a new space agency, the Korean version of NASA, this year. The Ministry of Science and ICT on Thursday announced its proposal for a special law related to the establishment and operation of the new space agency. The law would combine the roles currently assigned to different ministries to allow a single agency, tentatively named the Korea Space and Aeronautics Administration, to focus on the country's space projects. The Science Ministry is also calling for South Korea's National Space Committee to be headed by the president rather than the prime minister as it is now. Further, it's pushing for the leader of the tentative space body to join the committee currently made up of the ministers of foreign affairs, defense, finance, and others. The special law would grant the administration much flexibility in the recruitment, organization, and payment of personnel. It would also allow compensation to exceed the pay standards for public officials. There will be incentives for researchers who contribute to technological advancements, and it would allow the hiring of foreign nationals. The Science Ministry will receive feedback on the proposal until March 17th to finalize the law before it's put forward for approval at the National Assembly in the first half of this year. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
The world of art is constantly evolving, and artists with disabilities are making significant contributions to this ever-changing landscape. Our Shin Se-byuk met some of those artists.
Delicately embedded tiles on the roof, faint light illuminates the outer walls. This is the house that artist Park Hwan remembers. He's visually impaired and an artist who sees the world not with his eyes, but with his hands. He creates his art with thread for the outline, using his fingertips and memories to complete. Park is part of a special art exhibition only dedicated to artists with disabilities.
I can't see, which makes it almost impossible to know how things are expressed, how colors are applied, and so on. This presents a major challenge for artists like me, but I keep telling myself, I've got this, I can do this. Day after day, month after month, I keep going, and gradually I see change.
Born partially sighted, Eugene says this has never held her back in becoming an artist.
I just draw by feel without necessarily looking at it. My paintings may not be as detailed as others, but that's what I see. My paintings show how I see the world that cannot be explained in words.
The organizer of this special exhibition says they wanted to create a shared cultural experience for people with and without disabilities.
Sight is often considered the most valued sense. I thought working with people with visual impairments could offer a unique perspective and provide us with a new way of approaching things.
The first exhibition last year only showcased the works of visually impaired artists. But this time, the organizer has pushed the boundaries even further to include artists with developmental and physical disabilities. A former professional photographer has become a painter and reflects his own life through paintings.
I can't walk anymore, so I can't take photos like before. Painting, though, it's amazing. You can express whatever's in your head. Back then, I recorded my life through photo. Now I do that by painting.
All participating artists say they want to be recognized solely as an artist, without disabilities being a defining factor. The agency also hopes that such exhibitions will promote greater inclusivity and acceptance, not only in cultural settings but also in society as a whole. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Make sure to wrap up extra warm until tomorrow morning. A surge of cold air will keep temperatures in the minus range for most inland regions, but daytime conditions will be warming up fast, creating wide temperature gaps. While Seoul will see a gap of 12 degrees, southern parts of the country, such as Daegu and Jangsu, will see a bigger difference. It's much easier to catch a cold during this time of the year, so please take extra care of your health. In the meantime, it looks like dry spells will persist for quite some time. In fact, dry weather advisories have been issued for 3 consecutive days, including for Seoul as well. From time to time, gusty winds will be blowing across the nation, which will increase the risk of wildfires, so please be extra careful with anything that can start a fire. And sunny skies will dominate nationwide. Seoul will be starting off at -1 degree tomorrow. Daily highs will be jumping significantly. Highs in Seoul will jump to 11 degrees, Gwangju 14, Daegu will be warm at 16 degrees. Maximum temperatures will keep rising from this point on. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with most up-to-date news tomorrow. Good night.